What happens when two of music's most beloved stars sit down for what should be a casual chat, and it turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history? You're about to find out. Because KeithUrban just walked off Kelly Clarkson's set, and the tension that led to that moment was absolutely explosive. What started as a warm, friendly interview quickly transformed into a conversation that no one in the studio was prepared for, including the audience watching from their seats in stunned silence. At first, everything felt completely normal. KeithUrban sat comfortably in his chair, calm and composed, with his signature guitar pick necklace resting under his jacket. Kelly Clarkson greeted him with her usual bright energy, smiling widely, laughing easily, and setting the tone for what looked like just another successful celebrity interview. They talked about his latest album, creative process, and tour plans. The audience clapped often, enjoying the easy chemistry between them. Then, the shift happened. Kelly leaned forward slightly, her smile still present, but something about it felt more curious, more pointed. She asked a question that sliced clean through the casual vibe of the room. She wondered aloud whether Keith, having grown up in Australia, ever felt like he had to play a character to fit into country music. She phrased it gently, but the meaning behind it was heavy. The room went still, as if the air itself had changed. Keith let out a small, tight laugh, unsure if he had heard her correctly. He calmly asked her to clarify. That was the moment the interview started drifting into dangerous territory. Kelly explained that she meant how he didn't grow up in Texas or Tennessee, yet wore the look, the boots, the image. She asked whether he ever felt like he was adopting something that wasn't originally his. The laughter stopped. The applause disappeared. Keith leaned back slightly, the tension visible in his jaw as he responded. He said he had played country music since he was 6 years old, that his parents raised him on it, that this wasn't a costume or a trend he picked up later in life. For him, this music wasn't borrowed. It was lived. But Kelly pressed further. She pointed out the difference between living inside a culture and loving it from afar. She talked about how she grew up in Texas, how she understood the culture from the inside. Her tone remained calm, but the words felt sharper now. Keith leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, and asked directly if she was questioning his authenticity. The room felt heavy. The conversation had crossed from polite curiosity to something much deeper, and there was no turning back. Kelly quickly tried to soften the moment, insisting she wasn't accusing him of being fake. She framed it as an interesting conversation, pointing out that he had come into a genre with deep American roots as an outsider and built a massive career. On the surface, it sounded appreciative. Underneath, it felt like a challenge. Keith shook his head slowly. His voice remained controlled, but a new edge was there. He explained that he hadn't walked into Nashville with privilege or shortcuts. He played every bar that would let him hold a guitar. He worked for every bit of respect he had earned. The silence in the audience was unsettling now. No one shifted, no one whispered. Everyone felt the tension. Kelly continued, bringing up gatekeeping in country music. She mentioned how Black and Latin artists have faced exclusion, then pointed back to Keith's success. The implication hung in the air, even if she tried to keep it academic and careful. Keith's expression changed entirely. This wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. It felt insulting. He asked plainly if she was comparing him to people who had faced real discrimination. Kelly quickly denied it, but at the same time suggested that the industry had been more welcoming to him because he fit a certain image. Those words landed hard. Keith stood up, not angrily, but quickly enough to shock everyone in the room. He asked her to say what she meant, to define the image. That was the breaking point. The playful, friendly atmosphere from the start of the show felt like a distant memory. Kelly tried to get him to sit down. He refused, saying that if she wanted to have this conversation on national television, then she should be honest about what she was implying. He accused her of suggesting that his whiteness made things easier. Kelly tried to redirect the conversation toward talk of biases, but the damage was done. Keith's voice sharpened. He asked if the purpose of this was to invalidate everything he had worked for, to suggest that his success was based on how he looked rather than what he had endured. For Kelly, the mood shifted from confident host to visibly shaken. She tried to defend herself, explaining that she wanted to talk about systemic problems. Keith wasn't buying it. He accused her of ambushing him with accusations disguised as curiosity. The audience reacted quietly, with small gasps, shocked by the sharpness of his words. He said she wasn't trying to have a real conversation. She was trying to create a moment. Kelly pushed back, clearly hurt now. She said she had always respected him, admired him, and would never invite someone just to tear them down. But the distance between them, both physically and emotionally, felt larger with every sentence. Keith picked up his phone from the side table, a subtle movement that felt symbolic, like he was already halfway out of the situation. He said that respect didn't look like questioning his right to exist in the genre. Kelly stood up too, her voice trembling but still trying to assert control over the conversation and the stage. He turned the conversation back toward her, bringing up how she found fame through a televised competition that gave her instant access to an audience millions dreamed of. The audience froze again. It felt like a line had been crossed on both sides now. Kelly looked stunned. She quickly defended herself, listing the years of hard work and battles for creative control. Keith cut her off, pointing out the double standard he felt was happening in real time. When she succeeded, it was seen as perseverance. When he succeeded, it was being interpreted as privilege or appropriation. Kelly insisted she never used that word, but he told her she didn't have to. That was what the conversation had been circling around since the beginning. The producer began to appear at the edge of the stage, clearly trying to signal that things were getting out of hand. Neither of them paid attention. Kelly's eyes filled with tears as she tried to explain that she only wanted him to think about broader context. She wanted reflection, not apology. Keith said he already did that. Every day, mentoring younger artists, trying to open doors for people when he could. He refused to be shamed for walking through doors he had opened for himself. The emotional temperature of the room rose. Kelly cried openly now, makeup slightly smudged, voice breaking between sentences. She tried to frame her point one last time, that talented people exist everywhere, but not everyone gets equal opportunity. Keith didn't deny that reality. He just refused to accept that acknowledging it required diminishing his own story. For the first time, Kelly softened her tone. She admitted that maybe the conversation could have been handled better. Maybe her wording was wrong, but she insisted the intention was good. Keith responded that good intentions didn't cancel out bad execution, especially when someone's dignity was involved. The back and forth became less explosive and more heavy, more wounded. Both of them sounded tired, hurt, misunderstood, but the tension never left. The audience didn't breathe normally. Every word felt like it could be the final spark. Kelly said she thought he was thoughtful enough to engage. Keith said she thought he'd be compliant enough to agree. That single exchange summarized everything that went wrong. He said he wouldn't apologize for being good, and he wouldn't accept blame for problems he didn't create. Tears continued to fall. Voices softened, but the emotional damage was already done. Finally, Kelly said they should take a break. The room seemed to inhale all at once, relieved that maybe the pressure would release. But Keith disagreed. He said he didn't need a break. He needed to leave. That sentence hit the studio like a wave. Kelly's face went pale as she asked him not to do this. She urged him to sit and finish the conversation like adults. Keith answered that adults didn't ambush each other on national television. He said that if she genuinely wanted to understand his perspective, she could have asked privately, instead of placing him under studio lights and cameras. Kelly defended her approach by saying this was her job, to have meaningful conversations. He replied that meaningful conversations didn't require turning guests into examples for a narrative. He said he felt like a prop, a storyline. The producer stepped forward, whispering urgently, but Kelly waved them away. She apologized again, but insisted she wasn't wrong to bring it up. Keith said there was a difference between hard conversations and public humiliation. He told her she took away his choice when she surprised him in front of a live audience. Kelly argued that he could have deflected, changed the topic. He said he felt trapped, cornered, forced to defend his integrity instead of enjoying a respectful conversation. There was no high road, only silence or self-defense. When Kelly tried to clarify that she was criticizing systems, not him, Keith insisted she made it about him the moment she questioned his authenticity. She tried to balance the conversation by saying both things could be true, that he worked hard, and that parts of his identity made his path smoother. Keith stared at her and said he wasn't willing to accept someone else's judgment about his life. He accused her of inviting him under false pretenses. She looked embarrassed, frustrated, and emotionally drained. In a last attempt to steady things, Kelly said she had always admired him and never intended to hurt him. Keith paused. For a moment, the tension softened. He admitted he didn't know what to think anymore. He only knew that he walked onto the stage feeling good and now felt like he had to defend his entire existence. Kelly apologized for how he felt, but stood by the need for difficult conversations. Keith responded that difficult didn't have to mean disrespectful. He said that bringing someone on a show just to challenge their legitimacy wasn't dialogue. It was humiliation. Then, without another word, he turned away from the chair and walked off the set. No music, no applause, just silence.